my haere mai, distinguished guests, greetings to you all, and thank you for coming to hear me speak to you today. I'll get these mixed up, I'm sure. Okay, so the title of my address today is Age-Friendly Communities, a Journey Towards Wellbeing. And as mentioned, I'm a Professor of Wellbeing and Ageing, and the focus of my work is in ensuring communities are appropriate places for older adults to age in. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background and my career and how I've come to be standing in front of you today. And then I want to present a summary of some of the work that we've been doing for a number of years now around age-friendly. So I'm not going to present endless research findings, but I'm going to just provide a bit of a summary so that you get an idea of what some of the key things are that you as Nelsonians might want to use to incorporate into ensuring Nelson is age-friendly. So, a bit about my background. I'm a registered nurse, and I've been a nurse since I was 17, which is quite a long time now. I have a really strong background in gerontology and working with older adults, so I've worked with older adults just throughout my whole career. And so this is a picture of me taken as a young registered nurse working in an assessment, treatment and rehabilitation unit at the now closed Princess Margaret Hospital in Christchurch. And I am a head of department for nursing at AUT, that's part of my job, and the other part is being a director of the AUT Centre for Active Ageing. And along with Nikki, we are both on the Office for Seniors Advisory Group for Age-Friendly Aotearoa. So this is a quick summary of what our research centre does. You'll see the key elements of our research centre is around working and making sure our communities are inclusive, that older adults have really good social life and social opportunities within their communities, and that older adults can easily access and negotiate any health issues that they have, and that spaces within cities are appropriate places for older adults to be able to get around in. So that's the key focus of our research centre. And so one of the key things we've been doing for a number of years now is contributing to age friendliness through working with the Office for Seniors, as well as working with a number of local councils throughout the country. Our approach has largely coined something called social gerontology, which I will talk about. But before I do, here are some of the members of our research centre, and these are all mainly new and emerging researchers. And so they've done quite a lot of work in this space as part of their higher degree studies, whether it's at master's level or whether at doctoral level. So I do thank them for their contribution. So I'll just explain what I mean by social gerontology. So what social gerontology does is it allows us to focus on the social impacts that affect ageing, and it enables me as a researcher to challenge some of the taken for granted assumptions and influences that impact on the well-being of older adults. And these include things like the political, the economic, the biological and the socio-cultural influences. And so central to my work as a social gerontologist is to always ensure that the voices and the perspectives of older people are included in all of the work that we do, and that infiltrates into local government and right up through into central government. So for me, doing something, we call it a bottom-up approach, is really important, and that's probably one of the key messages that I'm going to give you today, is to make sure, Nelson Council, that in planning an age-friendly Nelson, that you are really serious about including the voices and perspectives of older adults. So just a quick summary and overview of what age friendliness is about for those of you that may not know. So this phenomenon came about because at the beginning of the 21st century, you all would have seen it in the media around urbanisation, and a growing older population. So there are two significant trends that have caused the development of this age-friendly movement. We also know that health budgets in any country across the world are constantly being challenged, and that in many instances older people are higher users of health services, particularly those who live in advanced age. So the way forward is not a surprise to me, and that is to improve the well-being of older people. So there are really strong empirical links between active and socially engaged, that for older people to be active and socially engaged, and well-being. And so some of the benefits of being active and socially engaged include reducing health issues and also reducing the utilisation of health services. So being active and socially engaged is integral to the World Health Organisation's age-friendly movement, so that's where age-friendliness comes from. The World Health Organisation undertook some research with about 33 countries across the world and came up with an age-friendly model. And here are the key domains of that model. So you'll see that there are 8 domains. So this is the World Health Organisation age-friendly framework. And you can see that the model covers both the physical and social environments that make up a community, and it's from roads to footpaths to opportunities for social outings, and these are captured in each of these 8 domains. And it's really important that inter and cross-sectional approach to age-friendliness is undertaken, and that's another message for our Nelson councillors as they embark on this journey. So each of the domains cover things like outdoor spaces and buildings, transportation, housing, social participation, respect and social inclusion, civic participation and employment, communication and information, and civic and health services. And so what these domains do is that they give communities direction as they work towards becoming age-friendly. So often it's referred to as a checklist. So if you go on the World Health Organisation's site, under each of these 8 domains, they'll identify some key indicators for communities to address as they move towards becoming age-friendly. So let's now focus on wellness and ageing within a demographic context. So many consumers of health services are older, and there's no denying that the global numbers of older adults are growing and will continue to grow in the future. And there is an exponential increase in particularly the age groups of 85 and over. We already know that New Zealand and Australia's ageing population will become more noticeable in the next 20 years as the baby boomer generation reach 65, and that the ageing population is projected to continue to increase due to longer lifespans and a flat birth rate. And you'll also know in Nelson that you experience high inward migration of older people, so ensuring your community is fit for purpose both now and in the future is really important. So let's not forget that our ageing society is one of our greatest achievements. It's something to be celebrated. And a growing number of older adults are in good health, have valuable skills and experience, and are making significant contributions to both our economy and also to society. And so positive and active ageing is critical. If we are to tackle the challenge of population ageing, we must enable people to stay active as they grow older and provide support so that they can continue to contribute meaningfully to society. So, how are older people represented at central government level? We have a Minister for Seniors, the Honourable Tracy Martin, and Minister Martin's office is titled the Office for Seniors and is physically located within the Ministry for Social Development. This is a small ministerial office that receives minimal funding in comparison to many of the other offices and directorates. As a social gerontologist, I find this perplexing, and I also think it's ageist. But that's something that I'll return to later in my presentation. There are several strategies that relate to older adults in New Zealand, but two of the main strategies that I'd like to just cover today that relate specifically to age friendliness are the Better Later Life strategy and the Healthy Ageing strategy. So the Better Later Life strategy comes out of a different ministry to the Healthy Ageing strategy. So Healthy Ageing comes out of the Ministry of Health, and the Better Later Life strategy comes out of the Office for Seniors. And what's really interesting is that there is a bit of a disconnect between those two ministries. And I would have thought, and I would hope that moving forward, this is something that we do challenge the Minister on, is that there will be better collaboration across those two ministries. So let's just have a quick look at each of the strategies. So first of all, the Better Later Life. This replaced the 2001 Positive Ageing strategy, and the key focus of the strategy is to ensure that we, as citizens of New Zealand, value older people as they age, keep people safe within their communities, recognise diversity and that everyone is unique, take a whānau-centred approach to ageing, and also work collectively as a community to be responsible to plan and act for later life. And the Healthy Ageing strategy, the vision for this is that older people live well, age well and get well in a system that's people-powered. That's really interesting, the people-powered bit, because again, it allows communities to move the emphasis back down onto the communities themselves, and in this instance, older people themselves, to actually drive the key things that they need to age well, and in your instance, to age well in Nelson. So central to this strategy is things like healthy ageing, which you'll know about, making sure that our communities are age-friendly, so this strategy names age-friendliness as being important, and also to align health systems to the needs of older populations. So I thought I'd plot on a map some of the areas within New Zealand that are currently engaged in age-friendly initiatives. So there's quite a number of them. Hamilton is our very first age-friendly city. So they achieved age-friendly status, I think it might have been at the end of 2018. And so who's next? It might be Nelson. Nelson could be number 2 in New Zealand. But the Office for Seniors has signed up, so central government has signed up with the World Health Organisation to make New Zealand age-friendly. So there is a mandate at central government level. So here's some of the age-friendly projects that we've undertaken in our research centre. So we've done an evaluation for the Office for Seniors, which was on 3 sites that they funded, so Kapiti, New Plymouth and Hamilton. We've also done some work in rural New Zealand, so Warkworth. So we've just finished collecting data around us. We're trying to answer the question, how age-friendly ready is Warkworth? Because Auckland City Council, which encompasses Warkworth, has decided that it would like to be age-friendly. We did some work in urban Auckland and Hibiscus and Bays, and I've just had a doctoral student finish a really nice piece of work that looked at what it's like to live in the inner city of Auckland if you're 85 years and over. I don't know if you've been reading the papers recently, but we're calling Auckland the city of cones at the moment, because there's orange traffic cones everywhere. I've also got another doctoral student that's looking at dementia-friendly environments as well. So making sure that our communities are appropriate places for people who live with dementia to actually live in. And of course we've been supporting you here in Nelson. So what were some of the things that we found? So we found that in all of the work that we've done, every single community takes a different approach to being age-friendly. So what that suggests is that there is no one approach that you can just roll out and use and it will be successful. As a community, you'll find your own way. You'll find the thing that will work and will meet the needs of your specific community. And so, but regardless of the differences within these communities and the different tack that they took, they still all achieved successfully age-friendly initiatives. So here are some examples. So for example, one community focused on doing quite simple things like providing transport for older people between this rural community and the local hospital so that people could actually go and see specialists and receive treatment. Other communities focused more on older people focused events. So in Hamilton they run an annual Kaumatua Olympics. So that's all focused around providing social opportunities for older adults. Other communities looked at improving outdoor spaces, and that's things like access to buildings or changing the phasing of traffic lights to enable somebody on a walker to be able to get across the road. So I live in urban Auckland, and as part of the Auckland City Plan, they've created these big corridors and the speed of the traffic doesn't give older people confidence to be able to walk across the road, and the phasing of the lights is not long enough. And so we very simply lobbied the council. They changed the phasing of the lights, and people felt more confident to be able to negotiate this busy road. Other communities focused on improving access to information, or the way information is delivered from a local council point of view through into their communities, and vice versa. And yet other communities then focused on businesses. So in Kapiti, for example, they have a Business Choice Award, which is an annual award that's given to the business that is voted by older people within Kapiti as being age-friendly. So what are some pointers that you might like to think about as you move towards being age-friendly? I've already mentioned this before, but there's this dual approach that's really important. You need a bottom-up approach and at the same time a top-down approach. So the bottom-up approach is older people themselves within your community need to be included in making key decisions about how you move forward and toward being age-friendly. And equally, councils, so local government and central government, need to also be committed to providing the resources and the spaces for age-friendly initiatives to occur. I'm not sure if you have a steering group in Nelson, but a steering group is really important. Yes, Nikki's nodding. And is fundamental to the success of any age-friendly initiative. But the makeup of that steering group is equally important. So make sure that you have good, diverse representation so that all of your older people groups and people that live in Nelson are represented. And that includes both ethnicity and culture as well. So an example is making sure that you might have LGBT representation on your group, or people who live in social housing, for example, or don't have huge amounts of disposable income. So diversity in terms of your steering groups, I think, is really important. Make sure that as a community you undertake a needs assessment so that you actually identify what are the key elements in your community that are already age-friendly and what are some of the things that you might need moving forward. And build on the existing strengths within the community, because I bet you that you've got some really good age-friendly initiatives that's already happening here. So it's about identifying what they are and then celebrating your success, getting them up and running, and use them as a foundation to then develop the next age-friendly initiative. I think identifying realistic projects that will be successful is really important, because when we've worked quite a lot with Warkworth, north of Auckland, and one of the key things that the community said to us is that we're not interested in this unless we get some real tangible benefits from it. And so as soon as they saw that yes, what they said they wanted actually started to happen, then it gave them confidence in us to then ask us to do more things that were appropriate for them. Ensure you've got a good plan, and finally, what I think is really important is to have a look at your community and see whether there are any things that relate to ageism in there. Because one of the key things to a successful age-friendly community is the elimination of ageism. And this is a great segue for my next part of my presentation. So eliminating ageism is central to the success of age-friendly communities. And the World Health Organization is also leading and working with key stakeholders on a global campaign to combat ageism. And that aims to build a world for all ages by changing the way we think, feel and act towards age and ageing. So what is ageing? It's the stereotyping, prejudice and discrimination against people on the basis of their age. So ageism is pervasive and has profound negative consequences on older adults' health and well-being. It occurs at all levels of society, and it's insidious and subtle, but yet very effective in its intent. And the intent is to silence and marginalise older groups, in many instances by those who think that they know best. And as a result of ageist practices, older adults are frequently infantilised or treated like children, spoken to in a patronising manner, and portrayed as a homogenous group who lack individuality, and they're also deemed as a burden on society. A good example is references in the media to the Grey Tsunami. You're all familiar with the Grey Tsunami? I think this is ageist. A tsunami conjures up images of danger, devastation and destruction, and referring to older groups in this way intimates that society needs to protect itself from this disaster that is fast approaching. Indeed, I believe a strengths-based approach is needed. Older people have significant experience and wisdom that should be harnessed, valued and utilised to improve social capital. I'm now going to provide you with 3 examples of the subtleties of ageism at a central and local government level, at an institutional level, and within healthcare. So let's start with ageism at central and local government. So earlier I mentioned how the Office for Seniors lacks funding despite data from Statistics New Zealand about the ageing population. I would have thought that an increase in funding would have been really important and sensible. And I also find it fascinating that the Minister for Seniors holds a dual portfolio as the Minister for Vulnerable Children. Now this isn't a personal criticism of the Minister or the work that she undertakes. On the contrary, Minister Martin is a very connected and engaged Minister for Seniors, and I respect her. The issue I take is that at central government level, someone, and I presume it's naively, deemed this dual appointment appropriate. As I have earlier mentioned, infantilisation of older adults is a marker of ageism, and my research has shown that older adults are frequently referred to as children and having a second childhood. What message does this send to society? That there are similarities between being a child and an older adult, and that the same policies and focus is needed? I think not. In our research, we also found that many councils held ageist attitudes. As with central government, these were often subtle and unintentional, yet provided powerful negative messages about older people. So, for example, some councils in New Zealand focus on being child or family friendly, even though their demographic is predominantly older. When challenged, some councils believe that their community, that if their community is family and child friendly, that is enough. Let me assert that the needs of families and children are very different to the needs of older adults. And in many instances, a child and family friendly community will not be suffice. So ageism at an institutional level, I'm referring now more around older workers. I was at a national meeting recently for senior nurses across the country, where a senior government official from Health Workforce New Zealand came in to speak to us on the future of the health workforce, and started by telling us that we were a very grey lot. And that it was important for us to refresh senior leadership positions, and challenged us about the strategies that each of us had around succession planning and our replacements. Yes, succession planning is important, but the underlying message is ageist. Older people are blocking positions and should move aside and give those in the next generation an opportunity. Yeah, I think this is ageist. What is not portrayed, though, in any of these discussions is that due to demographic changes, we actually need older people to work longer, and older people are working longer. So in actual fact, the challenges for employers shouldn't be focused on getting rid of older workers, but should ensure that the work environment is agile enough to promote productivity and to ensure that older adults can come to work and do their job. Also, it's really interesting, for the very first time in history, we have approximately 5 different generations in the workplace. And each of those generations have a different style of working and a different way of working, and they want to work differently to each other. And so older workers are important because older workers provide a stability to a workforce that many other generations don't. And so the third aspect of ageism that I'd like to address today is ageism that exists within healthcare. So again, findings from our research has shown that in the acute hospital care setting, care rationing occurs. What do I mean by care rationing is that often services will be given to certain groups of people and not offered to other groups of people. In a study that we did with older people who experienced delirium, we found that older people frequently had to wait long periods of time for an intervention, and in addition, if you were younger and acutely unwell, then you were assigned the registered nurse who had the most experience. Conversely, if you were older, you received care from the more inexperienced registered nurse on the ward. Yep. So that's data we found in our study. So if we just stick with delirium for a minute, it is deemed a medical emergency, and it can result in death, it can result in an increased length of hospital stay, and it can also result in inappropriate placement into residential care facilities. So 3 quite major things if you experience this health event. There are some really fundamental non-pharmacological or non-drug interventions that you can do to reduce delirium in older adults, and one of those is to keep a person in a stable and constant environment. Now, why, in our research, why was it that we found that many older adults who had delirium that were in an acute hospital setting were moved sometimes 8 times a day? Yeah. So what that did was that actually increased their delirium, increased the length of hospital stay, and increased the cost of health care. So you can see how by addressing things like ageism, you can actually improve not only the well-being of older adults, but you can also save a cash-strapped PHB system quite a lot of money. So, I'm on a bit of a crusade about eliminating ageism, and I'd like you to join me. There's a really simple and easy first step. Stop referring to older adults as elderly. Yep. So the language we use both shapes and reflects our values and influences our attitude towards old people. So many media indiscriminately refer to people as elderly, and however, elderly is a valid term to use when referring to those older adults who are frail and have been assessed using an appropriate frailty measure as elderly. That's the only time you should be using that term. However, we know that elderly is used very indiscriminately to refer to anybody who's aged 65 years and over. So I'm an editor for an international journal called the Journal of Clinical Nursing, and one of the things that I've done for the journal is we will reject any manuscript that's been submitted that refers to older adults as the elderly. So that's sending a very clear message out to, in this case, it's a nursing journal, to all nurses, that they have to change the way that they use their language. And as part of being the director of the AUT Centre for Active Ageing, we're on a crusade at the moment with the media, where we call out media. So just this week, I'm a great user of Twitter. I sent a Twitter message to the New Zealand Herald. Every time they use the term elderly in any of their media, we will call them out. So it's something really simple. I encourage you all to do it. It's the right thing to do. So that brings me to the end of my talk today. So thank you, Nelson, for inviting me to come down, be part of this fantastic launch. And I do wish you all the very best as you move towards becoming age-friendly. And remember, our research centre is here to help. We're available, we've got quite a lot of expertise, and we'd love to continue to have a relationship with you. And I'd love